These clauses deal with premium returns, multiple vessels, liability of underwriters, and affiliated companies. Clause 25 provides canceling returns. If the insurance is canceled by agreement, underwriters return premium for each uncommenced month, provided no total loss has occurred. Clause 26 states that where multiple vessels are insured under one policy, each vessel is treated as separately insured. Clause 27 introduces the principle of several liability. Each underwriter is responsible only for their own subscribed share of the risk. One underwriter is not responsible for another underwriter's share. Clause 28 deals with affiliated companies. Where a vessel is chartered by an associated or subsidiary company, underwriters waive certain rights of subrogation against that affiliated company. These clauses define administrative and legal relationships within marine insurance contracts.
These are paramount exclusions. A paramount clause overrides anything inconsistent elsewhere in the policy. Clause 29 excludes war risks. This includes war, civil war, rebellion, insurrection, hostile acts, seizure, capture, detention, mines, torpedoes, and similar war-related events. Clause 30 excludes terrorism and politically motivated acts. Any loss caused by terrorists or persons acting for political motives is excluded. Clause 31 excludes radioactive contamination and nuclear risks. It also excludes chemical, biological, biochemical, and electromagnetic weapons. This means ordinary hull and machinery insurance does not cover war risks, terrorism risks, or nuclear-related losses. Separate war risk insurance is usually required for such exposures. A common oral question is, are war risks covered under hull and machinery insurance? The answer is no. War risks are specifically excluded under Clause 29 and are normally covered separately by war risk insurance.
Clause 32 establishes geographical limits within which the vessel may trade. Certain high-risk areas are restricted due to severe weather, ice conditions, remoteness, or navigational hazards. Examples include the Arctic regions, the White Sea, parts of the Baltic, Greenland waters, certain North American waters, the Southern Ocean, the Sea of Okhotsk, and parts of the Bering Sea. If a vessel enters restricted areas without insurer approval, insurance coverage may be affected. These restrictions help insurers control exposure to extraordinary risks. For examination purposes, remember, navigating limits define areas where vessels may not trade without prior approval from underwriters.
Clause 33 allows permission to enter restricted areas. If prior permission is obtained from underwriters and any additional premium is agreed, the vessel may enter otherwise restricted waters. Clause 34 deals with recommissioning after layup. If a vessel has been laid up for more than 180 consecutive days, it must be inspected by class or an approved surveyor before returning to service. Any recommended repairs must be completed. Clause 35 concerns premium payment. Premiums must be paid within the specified period, normally 45 days. Failure to pay can lead to cancellation of insurance. Clause 36 confirms that third parties generally have no rights under the policy unless expressly stated. A useful examination point is, a vessel laid up for more than 180 days requires survey and recommissioning before insurance fully responds.
These are optional clauses and apply only if agreed by underwriters. Clause 37 extends collision coverage to fixed and floating objects. Normally, collision liability applies to another vessel. With this extension, coverage also applies when the vessel strikes structures such as jetties, buoys, dolphins, offshore installations, or other fixed and floating objects. Clause 38 introduces 4/4 collision liability. Under the standard clause, only 3/4 of collision liability is covered. Under Clause 38, the words 3/4 are removed. The insurer therefore covers the full 100% of collision liability, subject to policy limits and exclusions. A simple oral answer is, Clause 38 converts traditional 3/4 collision liability into full 4/4 collision liability.
Clause 39 deals with premium returns for layup. If a vessel remains laid up in an approved port or layup area for 30 consecutive days, the owner may be entitled to a return of premium. The vessel must not be under repair. Normal maintenance and class survey work do not necessarily disqualify the vessel. However, repairs resulting from damage or structural modifications may prevent entitlement. No return is allowed if a vessel is in an exposed area, the layup location is not approved, or the vessel is being used for storage or lightering operations. The purpose of this clause is simple. A vessel that is safely laid up presents less risk to insurers, so a portion of premium may be refunded.
If you are finding these MEO Class 1 insurance topics useful and easy to understand, please subscribe to the channel and press the notification bell. It motivates me to create more detailed maritime law and marine engineering content for your MEO Class 1 preparation. Also, comment below which topic you would like me to cover next.
Clause 40 is another optional clause. Normally, general average contributions are collected from cargo interests, freight interests, bunker interests, and other participating parties. Under general average absorption, the underwriters agree to absorb those contributions up to an agreed amount. This means the shipowner can recover the amount directly from insurers without collecting contributions from cargo interests. The clause also covers reasonable fees of average adjusters. Claims are adjusted under the York-Antwerp Rules 1994. Importantly, no deductible applies. The clause simplifies administration and avoids the difficulty of collecting numerous general average contributions from multiple parties. For oral examinations, general average absorption allows insurers to absorb general average contributions instead of recovering them from cargo interests.
Clause 41 provides broader protection than the standard Inch-Mary clause. It covers repair or replacement of burst boilers and broken shafts. It also covers correction of latent defects. Additionally, it provides protection for losses caused by negligence, incompetence, or errors of judgment by any person whatsoever. However, an important condition remains. The loss must not result from want of due diligence by the assured, owners, or managers. This clause significantly widens the scope of coverage and is often purchased as an enhancement to the standard policy. For examination purposes, Clause 41 extends cover to boiler repairs, shaft repairs, latent defect correction, and wider negligence-related losses.
When several insurers share the same risk, one insurer is usually appointed as the leading underwriter. Clause 42 gives authority to that leading underwriter. The leading underwriter may appoint surveyors, lawyers, experts, and average adjusters. They may also coordinate claims handling, settlements, recoveries, and provision of security. This arrangement ensures efficient administration of claims where multiple insurers participate in the same policy. For oral examinations, remember, the leading underwriter acts on behalf of co-insurers for claims administration and settlement.
Clause 43 concerns notification of claims. The assured must notify underwriters as soon as possible after becoming aware of a loss. This allows surveyors to be appointed and investigations to begin promptly. A very important examination point is the 180-day rule. If notice is not given within 180 days, the claim may be rejected unless underwriters agree otherwise. Clause 44 deals with tenders and repairs. Underwriters may influence the selection of repair yards and repair contractors. They may request competitive tenders to ensure repair costs are reasonable. Failure to comply with these requirements may result in a deduction of 15% from the claim. This 15% deduction is a favorite oral examination question. Remember it carefully.
Clause 45 outlines the responsibilities of the assured during claims handling. The assured must provide documents, records, and information requested by underwriters. The assured must cooperate with investigations, interviews, surveys, and inspections. Most importantly, the assured must not mislead underwriters. False evidence, concealment of material facts, or dishonest conduct can jeopardize the claim. However, legal privilege remains protected. A simple oral answer is, the assured must cooperate fully and honestly during the claims process. Clause 45 outlines the responsibilities of the assured during claims handling. The assured must provide documents, records, and information requested by underwriters. The assured must cooperate with investigations, interviews, surveys, and inspections. Most importantly, the assured must not mislead underwriters. False evidence, concealment of material facts, or dishonest conduct can jeopardize the claim. However, legal privilege remains protected. A simple oral answer is, the assured must cooperate fully and honestly during the claims process.
Clause 47 deals with provision of security. If a third party threatens to arrest the vessel following an incident, underwriters may assist by providing security or countersecurity. Clause 48 concerns payment of claims. Claims are paid to the agreed loss payee or directly to the assured. Once payment is made, the insurer's obligation for that amount is discharged. Clause 49 concerns recoveries. If money is recovered from third parties responsible for the loss, those recoveries are distributed between the assured and underwriters according to their respective interests. The assured must cooperate in pursuing recovery actions. For oral examinations, recoveries are shared proportionately between the assured and underwriters after recovery costs are deducted.
The final clause deals with dispute resolution. If disagreements arise between the assured and underwriters, the parties should first attempt settlement through negotiation. If negotiation fails, disputes may be referred to mediation or another form of alternative dispute resolution. The clause refers to the CEDR-SOLVE model procedures when no other procedure is agreed. Before concluding this lecture, let us revise the most important MEO Class 1 examination points. The international hull clauses are governed by English law. Named perils and inch-Mary perils are covered under Clause 2. The constructive total loss threshold is 80% of the insured value. Claims are settled on a new-for-old basis. Claims must generally be notified within 180 days. Failure to comply with tender requirements can result in a 15% deduction from the claim. War risks, terrorism risks, nuclear risks, and CBARN risks are excluded. Classification requirements, ISM compliance, ownership changes, and management changes can automatically affect insurance cover. These are among the most frequently asked topics in MEO Class 1 oral examinations and should be thoroughly understood. This completes our comprehensive overview of hull and machinery insurance under the international hull clauses.